The rest just decided I'm going to skip the main paper, and it should give me around a week or a week and a half to prepare. And maybe some of my friends will tell me what questions they had. Already that person is definitely not going to pass. We've had years where we made the same test, the main and the SSA, and people still fail. Okay, so let's look at the question paper in question. And it's this paper. One of the reasons why I am showing it to you guys is I was the internal moderator for Informatics 100 last year. It's like informatics, but a lighter version of informatics. It is done by the accountants, and the reason for this is the idea for the accountants is just for them to get to a problem-solving place where they can problem solve using computers. You guys are planning on making a career out of this, which is why yours is a little bit harder than what the accountants get to do. Just like the accountants, yours is going to be 3 hours. This was from 3 to 6 o'clock. Yours will most probably be on the Friday, during Friday from 2 to 5 o'clock, the last day of the semester. Instructions, these instructions were meant for, so if you are writing on campus, I think we had a mixed thing where some students were writing on campus and some were writing online. So if you are writing on campus, ladies and gentlemen, which is what you guys are definitely going to be doing, please save your work onto the T drive. And as you've noticed with load shedding and so forth in the last week or so, we've had interruptions where I couldn't even lecture because the projector was not on or the lights were not on. If something like that had to happen during your semester test, the computers are going to switch off. And the generators take about 5 minutes to switch back on. We will stop the time for when the generators are switching back on and until your computers are back up and running, and continue the time. So if you have not saved your work on the T drive, and this happens when there's like 2.5 hours, you've already written for 2.5 hours, you're going to have half an hour to write everything back. So please do save to the T drive on the lab computers. Who has never coded on the lab computers? Show of hands. Guys, most probably because you have a fancy computer, it's faster than the lab computers. And I would suggest that between now and your semester test, try and coding on those computers, because they're going to be the computers you're going to write your semester test on. You want to be familiar with the environment in which you're going to be writing your semester test. So maybe during a Friday afternoon maybe this Friday afternoon, try and start the next practical on those computers, and you get to learn certain things. You get to learn how slow they are compared to your own computer. You get to learn the speed of the keyboard and, right? So it's better for you to have that experience as opposed to sitting down on that day for your semester test for the first time and having to deal with this computer. We've had students on the day of the exam who said, I can't find Visual Studios, right? And it's not necessarily because they never coded before, but they've never used the lab computer. So the location in which that program is on their computer and on the lab computer is not on the same place. So please do familiarize yourself with those. There will be a certain naming convention, just like you have in your weekly practicals each week. It's going to be different to the one that's here. Here's another important part. Please save your code I think 5 minutes is a bit excessive. Every 15 minutes would be ideal. Every 15 minutes, or as soon as you are done with a certain section, right? So if I'm doing input and I'm done with input, even though my 15 minutes has elapsed, save it, test it. That way, if there is a power outage, T drive does not save stuff that's not been saved. So even if you put everything on the T drive, but you save nothing and you code for 2.5 hours, what do you think is going to happen when the power goes off? It's going to revert to the last save you had, which is the first one you had. So all of that work you lost. So I'd say every 10 to 15 minutes, save your work, or when you're done with a certain question, save your work to make sure you don't lose that information. This stuff was for the online people, CamScan and all of that. You don't have to worry about that. End of instructions. The biggest part we need to focus on is this. So this is basically what I did for your semester test. For your practical 9, I basically removed everything from the top and your question starts here. And this one says, BankSport is a new bank on the market and have approached you to develop an application that can help them with managing their clients' basic spending habits. This is to determine which clients are spending within their limits each month and which are not. They also want to know in which week do all the clients on average spend most of their money, and the clients will be monitored for the same number of weeks. Okay, so at this point, is there anything given away by the introduction there? What can you pick up from the introduction? From reading the introduction, what can you pick up about the question itself? This is something you should be able to do for your question paper as well. This is the first time you're reading it. This is the first time I'm reading it. What can we get from there? Okay, what I got from it is develop a Visual Studio application, help manage the clients, determine which clients are spending within their limits. Okay, they want to know in which week all the clients have an average spending. And the most important part is this one, which says all the clients will be monitored for the same number of weeks. Okay, and let's move on. We do have the following information will represent a client of the bank. So this is where your record structure comes in. So we have one, name of client, e.g. Jack Black. Two, the total amount of income of the client, example 25,000 Rand. The amount of money spent each week, example 5,524 Rand, 4,780, so forth, so forth. The amount of money spent by the client, the total amount of money left after the weeks, the average amount of money spent each week by the client, if the client should be flagged, and the rating of the client based on the money left. Okay, just with that information, what can you tell me about our record structure? What are you picking up from that information that has to do with our record structure? How many record structures do we have? Single record structure. Okay, what gave that away? Yes. Working with a single entity being a client. Okay, anyone else? Yeah.
You can't see any smaller records since the only array is the amount of money.
Okay, the only array is the amount of money, and the numbering is the same throughout, right? 1 to 8, so we can safely assume it's one record structure. Okay. Name of client. What data type is that? String. Now, how do we know that? The inverted commas in their example, right? Amount of income would be a integer doesn't quite work, right? Would be money is technically a double, because although Jack Black gets paid 25,000 Rand on the dot, some people may not get paid exactly that. So it should be a double. Amount of money spent each week, what data type is that? It's a double, okay? So it's just a double. An array of type double, right? How do we know that it's an array? Yeah? Each week. Okay, yes. The each week should give away the fact that this is a double, because we are working with, it should give away the fact that it is a array because it says each week. But not only that, if you look at the example, there's multiple values in that example. We've got 5,000, 524 and 75 cents, and then 4,782 Rand. So it's more than one input. That tells us it is a array. It's an array. And then we have total amount of money spent by the client. It says C question B. But from looking at a total, we are adding up all the money this person has used, and the money that the person has used is a double. So the total would be a double, right? It's an assumption I'm going to make at this point. Total amount of money left after the number of weeks. So money, we're still talking about money, so it would be a double as well. The average amount of money, average is a double. If the client should be flagged, G, I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to leave it open. And then the rating of the client, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to leave it open. So at this point, we know we have got a structure of a client. And then that structure, the following information will represent a client of the bank. So ideally, it should have said the following information will represent each client of the bank. So it says each client, then we know how many clients do we have. We have multiple clients, right? So we've got a record structure that is a array, and then within that record structure, we've got amount of money spent, which is also an array. We know the data types of most of our variables, except the last two, because they don't quite give anything away. But there's more information to it, so let's carry on. It says in addition, your application will need to be able to do the following. Read in the number of clients. So again, when we say read in number of clients, what does that tell us? We've got multiple clients. Not only do we have multiple clients, we don't know how many clients they are. So what does that say about our array? Dynamic array, right? And we need to read in the number of weeks. Number of weeks, what does that tell us about the weeks as well? It solidifies what we already know, the fact that weeks is an array. But it also tells us we don't know how many weeks, therefore weeks is also a dynamic array, right? And resize the needed arrays in the grid. So if you did not know there were arrays, it still says resize the grid. So as I said, this is a very kind of watered down version of informatics. So most of the stuff is going to be told exactly to the person what needs to be done. Our way of asking questions is going to be a little bit different. You'll see tomorrow I'll give you 2018's past paper as a practical, so you see the wording differences. But the words are always the same. For each means there is an array, for argument's sake. Okay, then read in all the needed information for each of the clients. So when we're saying read in all the information for each of the clients, looking at our structure, what are inputs and what are outputs? Yeah, the back there, yes. So what about the total income? Okay, how did you come to that realization? How do you know these are inputs and those are outputs? No, I'm saying from what you're looking at. How do you determine that name is an input? What did you use to determine that? How did you get to that conclusion? There must be some sort of formula you use to determine that name is an input and total is an output. Basically, I'm asking you to walk me through your logic. So you just know. Okay, that's problematic. And the reason why it's problematic is you just knowing there's no formula to you just knowing. So when the question is not about a bank, how are you going to know what are your inputs and what are your outputs? Are you going to put faith in you just knowing? Right? So think about how you got to that idea, or think about how you got to that conclusion. I'm not saying what you said is right or wrong. I just want to get to the thought process. So we've got an online person that says number 1 to 3 are inputs and 4 to 8 are outputs. Yes. How did you get to that? How did you get to that conclusion? What did you use? What what tell is there? Okay, so we've got another student that says by the example. So that's the easiest way to tell from here. Everything that is an input gives you an example of what that input is going to be, right? So for name, it says e.g. Jack Black. So that input not only tells you what data type it needs to be, but because that information has been provided to you, you can safely assume that it's going to be an input, right? The same with amount of total income, 25,000 Rand. Example, it tells you that the variable needs to be a double, but not only that, it tells you it is an input as well. Same with the third one, not only does it tell you it's an array of doubles, it tells you it's an input. So you'll notice 1, 2, 3 have examples, but 4 to 8 tell you to see a certain question, right? Even besides that, total. Would you want to give a program information that it asks you what the total is and what the average is? No, right? Ideally, the program should be able to calculate the total, average, and everything else. So you can assume everything that's going to be calculated or determined is going to be an output. We are going to let the user of the program know what the total is, what the average is, and everything else. Yes?
So we want some people to confuse number two, because number two is also output for total. That one same thing.
Number two says the amount of total income of the client. So how much money does the client get in a month? Yeah. It's not saying calculate. It says we want to know what the name of the client is. We want to know how much the client makes. We want to know over a certain amount of weeks how much money has the client spent. So therefore, the program should say the total amount of money they spent is this. Are they in the green? Are they in the red? Type of things. That's what the program needs to calculate. So does everyone see how to determine what are inputs and what are outputs? Good. Are there any questions with our record structure as it is? Yeah.
So you can also identify the outputs by anything that needs calculation.
Yes, you can, but that's a bit because you would have to read the rest of the question. So at the moment, we haven't read the rest of the question. We just read question A, which says read in the needed information for each client. So that's why I went back to say, how do we know what needs to be read in and how do we know what needs to be calculated? And the simple way is the ones that need to be read in will be given example data. The ones that need to be calculated will tell you to go and see a specific question or will say to be calculated. Good. So it says, then read in all the needed information for each of the clients and display the following for each client. So for each client, we need to display the name of the client, the total income they have. I guess here the wording is a bit wrong. It shouldn't be total income. It should be just income because the word total. So this is that part in the test. If it is throwing you off a bit, you can raise your hand and say, what do they mean by total? Because this total is throwing me off. We should be able to decipher the question for you and understanding the question. Obviously, you can't help you code, but if the question itself is throwing you for a loop, you can raise your hand and we'll try to help you. So we need to display the name, the total income, and the amount of money spent each week. So it's three things we need to display inside question A, right? So question A says we need to get the number of clients, number of weeks, and then we need to resize the grid. We need to display for each. And here again, there's for each, which tells us there's going to be a loop there, or it tells us it's going to be an array. For each client, name, total income, and amount of money spent each week. That is question A. Question B says determine. So these are the important bits again. Determine means we are going to be doing some sort of calculation, which also tells us it's going to be an output. Determine and store. In for it means in your record structure, the fourth element, which is the total amount of money by each client, and display. Okay. And the display part is very important, ladies and gentlemen. We never display information that you're not asked to display. So if you're not asked to display something, please don't try to display it because it's going to make your grid all warped. The grid may not be set up in such a way that it can accommodate for that piece of information, right? Store means use an array. No, store means store it in a variable. So it says store in for, right? If we go up, you'll see for, there is a variable for total. That's the variable you're going to use to store whatever you are determining. Display the total amount of money. So the person that set this paper is not very. Determine, store, and display the total amount of money that was spent over the number of weeks. Okay, should be simple enough. Also, determine and store and display the total amount of money left. This is the total income minus the total spent. Do you see what I'm saying? There is some information in this test that's just redundant, right? So for instance, if we're going to display how much money is left, do we still need to say that is calculated by taking how much money you spent, minusing, right? So this is that, not necessarily spoon feeding, but trying to make the question a little more easier for the accountants because they don't plan on doing coding for the rest of their lives. You, on the other hand, I'm not going to give you this much information. Okay, that's question B. So question C says determine, store, and display. We still have that golden trio. Determine, store, and display the average amount of money spent by each client over the number of weeks. This is the total money spent by the client divided by the number of weeks. You should know that. Quite easy enough. For each week, determine, store, and display. So at this point, we're basically determining everything in display. Determine, store, and display. And you might ask yourself, why am I highlighting these things? Because it happens. Students get to a point where they determine and display and don't store, or where they determine and store and don't display. So if it's highlighted all three of them, you can basically come back and say, okay, let me look at my highlighted parts. Did I determine? Go back to your code. Yes, I've determined. Have I stored? Yes, I have stored. Have I displayed? No, I haven't. So I need to display, or vice versa. Then as you're going through and ticking it off, you are making sure you've done everything that the question is asking of you. Okay. For each week, determine, store, and display the average amount of money spent. This is the total. So here's where a little curveball comes in. Where are we determining D? Rather, okay, we can determine it. Where are we storing D? Yeah. In the variable average. So in 6. We've already stored 6. We've already stored C in 6. C literally says determine, store in 6 and display. So where are we storing the calculation that we determined in D, question D? And what should give it away is the first couple of words. It says for each week, right? What is our record structure concerned with? Client. Is information about week important for a client? No, it is not. So should it be stored in the record structure? No, it shouldn't. There is no space for it in the record structure. So basically, you're going to create a variable for it and store it in that variable. In this case, it would be for each week. You'd have to create an array outside the structure to store that information. Okay. The average amount of money spent. This is the total amount. Okay, I'm not going to read that. E, create a function. Okay. And there's always one. There's always one student. Please don't be that student. Okay. It says create a function, not a subroutine, a function. Don't be the one student that creates a subroutine called determine rating. I have told you what the function name needs to be. Don't make it any other name, because this is how you lose marks. If you don't make it a function, you're going to lose marks. If you call it anything else other than determine rating, you're going to lose marks. And it should accept a single variable of type double. If it accepts anything else, you're going to lose marks as a parameter and returns a string as a result. Okay, quite simple. The function must make use of a set of single if statements. Okay, we're going even further to tell you what you need to do inside that function. Single if statements, please make sure you follow the following table. So value passed in the array as type double. If it's less than 0, then the value to be returned by the function should be E. If it's greater or equal to 0 and less than 1,000, the return should be C. If it's greater and equal to 1,000 and less than 10,000, it should be B. If it's greater than 10,000, it should be A. Quite simple, quite straightforward, right? That's question E. Now we get to question F. Using the function created above. So this is that double whammy. If you don't do the right function, if you use a subroutine, in the next button, you're going to lose marks as well, because you need to use the function you've created. Okay, using the function created in question E, determine, store, and display in 8. I'm just going to highlight the whole thing. The rating of each client. Rating of the client is based on the amount of money left. So basically, if they have less than 0 left, they are E. If they have more than 10,000 left, they're A. Okay, I don't know who has more than 10,000 left in their account at the end of the month, but hey, determine the rating based on that. Determine, store, and display in 7. If the client should be flagged. If the client's money left is less than 0, then they should be flagged. Also determine and display the percentage of the clients that are flagged and displayed in a text box. So in 7, remember we said the last 2, we don't know what the data types are. 7 says, should they be flagged? And it says over here, if the client should be flagged, if the client less than 0, then they should be flagged. Also determine and display the, it could be a Boolean, but it could be a yes or no. It really does not matter. I'll make it an integer. So if it's flagged, it will be 1. If they shouldn't be flagged, it will be a 0 type of thing. And then also the percentage needs to be calculated and displayed in a text box. That's not in the grid, it's in a text box. Lastly, determine and display in a text box the number of the week when on average the most amount of money was spent. So this is a min-max algorithm where we are going to say of all of the averages, which is the highest average, and display them in the text box. That's the end of your question paper. But there's more. If you scroll down, there is a rubric that tells you how marks are going to be allocated, what you need to do to get certain marks. And in most cases, there is information in this rubric that is not in the question that will make it a little bit easier for you to understand the question. But the biggest thing you need to take away from this is, if I shrink it, you can see the whole thing. You see that there's 2 columns when it comes to the mark allocation, right? There is a column that starts with 6 and 6. It says code. On top there it says code. So for question A, for reading in the information, resizing the grid, and input, you get 6 marks for reading in the for resizing the grid and reading in the resizing the grid, resizing arrays, and reading in the information, right? You get another 6 marks for input when you're inputting information in there. All in all, it's 12 marks. But on the last column, you'll see that it says correctness. So each question is effectively double the amount of marks it's worth. So that question A is worth 12 marks in terms of the code and 12 marks in terms of correct execution. So what does that mean? It means if it works and your code is correct, you can get all your marks. But if your code does not execute, you get 0 for execution. So you forfeited 50% not only of question A, but for every other question as well. The end of the day, you'll see correct execution counts for 40 marks. So if your code crashes at question A, you are forfeiting 40 marks of your semester test. And only 44 is available for the code. So what does that mean? If it does not crash, for argument's sake, but it is incorrect, and the maximum you've gotten for question A in terms of code is 6, what is the maximum you think you can get for execution? You're a bit harsh. It's 6. It's 6, not the maximum. I'm saying what is the maximum you can get? So if you've gotten 6 for the code out of 12, what is the maximum you think you can get for the execution out of 12? A maximum of 6, right? But that does not mean if you get 6 here, you'll get 6 there. You can still get less. What we're saying is you can't get more marks for execution than you've gotten for code. Good. It's one of the things you need to take away from here. And kind of gives you a brief summary of all the questions to say question A, B, C. This is how the marks are going to be collected. If I scroll up a bit, you'll see that there is about 16 free marks. These are charity marks. You don't even have to do anything to get these marks. First one is full design. Okay, you've been doing designs for 10 weeks now. You should know how to do a design. If your design is up to scratch, you get a total of 5 marks. You don't have to do the entire design as far as the algorithm part is concerned. We will tell you which question to do an algorithm for. So it shouldn't take you as long to do it. But your interface still needs to be intact, your input outputs needs to be intact, your events and actions and all of that, which is why we give you 20 minutes to do a design. So you've got 20 minutes to do the design. After 20 minutes, you can start coding. You don't have to start coding after 20 minutes. You can still continue and finish your design, but we're just saying we're going to allow you to start coding. You can code at the end, you can finish your design, or you can finish your design all at once and then code at the end. Yes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. You can do it both, but in the first 20 minutes, you're not allowed to code, just design. So as you are coding, if you see that there's something weird happening in your design, you can go back and change your design. There's no issue. Okay, but also we're not going to get to a point where we are marking your code and design next to each other and go, she has 5 buttons here, but 4 buttons here. I'm going to deduct marks. No, we just want to see, have you planned ahead? It can be slightly different to your final version. Hopefully that's what the assistants have been doing as well. We look at, did you design something? Did you have an idea of how it is going to go? No one's going to look and say, you've got 3, 4 loops here, but only 2 here. No, we understand that as you're coding, things may change, but you need to have a full design. 5 marks. Form, look and feel is we're looking at things like space, use of space, flow, if your buttons are in the right order. We're looking at, did you change the name of the properties? Did you change your form name? Did you change your button names? Did you change your text names if you have any? And do you have the right prefixes and all of that? So if you've changed them, form to FRM, buttons to BTN and all of that, and it is spaced well, you should get all 2 marks. Okay, which is easy marks to get, yes.
So you have to retype the colors. Like if you have like a heading and the heading is like too long, you have to retype colors.
You don't have to. It would be nice if you did, but you don't have to. It's not for marks. And then option statements is 1 mark. So some of you are going, it's 1 mark. I don't need that 1 mark, so I'm not going to put them up there. Same story applies. If you don't put them in there, we will. We will put them in there for you. And chances are, if your code works without them on, it's not going to work when we put them in. And now what happens? Your code is going to be judged to be a non-compiling code. And we're going to cap it at 40%. Okay, so please put in your option statements. You get that 1 mark. Variable and record structure. We did give you the record structure. You're basically going to be copying the record structure from the question onto your code. Again, you haven't done any application or any thinking. Commenting, just comments here and there. I would say a single comment per question. You'll get your 1 mark. It's 1 mark. Effective use of a subroutine. You need to use a subroutine at some point so that you get 2 marks for using a subroutine. Yes. Yeah. Hey man, I don't know. I didn't set this paper up. But no, variables and record structure. So we're not necessarily saying there needs to be one, but we're saying we're giving you marks, 5 marks for variables and record structures. Usually what we do in informatics 1A, not 100, is we will give you marks depending on how many variables are in the record structure. So if the record structure has 5 variables, it will be out of 5. If it has 4 variables, it will be out of 4. So for each variable you introduce to the record structure, you lose a mark. For each variable you omit from the record structure, you lose a mark as well. Quite simply put. Good. Questions on the free marks we are giving away. This is charity marks. You haven't even done anything at this point. Should we begin including a UML diagrams in our designs? What UML diagrams do you want to include? Oh, yes. We haven't showed you how to do that yet. We will show you how to do that at a later stage. Yes, you should. Actually have to speak to Prof. Leung about it and show you actually how to do those in the records in the design. But yes, you need to include your record structure in the design. Questions? Yeah.
So is option statement your option explicit?
Option explicit, option strict, option infer. Yeah. Those 3 lines of code. If they aren't there, you lose that 1 mark. We put them in, and chances are your code will not run afterwards. Yes, but we haven't showed you how to do that yet, so we will show you at a later stage. Yeah. Today, she didn't tell me she's doing that. I didn't teach my class that. But yes, you should include it. I will let my class know. I totally forgot about it, honestly speaking. But yes, you should include that in your design. Yeah. Any other questions? So you guys telling me you're going to get 100 for this paper if it was a semester test? No. So where are the questions where you are confused or unsure about certain things? Yeah.
So can you please explain C and D again? I don't understand what the difference is between both of them.
So C says determine, store, and display the average amount of money spent by each client. D says for each week, determine, store, and display the average amount of money that was spent in that week. So C has to do with a certain client. D has to do with a certain week.
So because both of them said for calculating the average is the same calculation.
No, it is not. So if I said for each student, I'd like to know what is the average mark for all your practicals. You personally. I get the average for you. But if I said I wanted to know for each practical, what is the average mark? That has to do with the entire class. So it's 2 different calculations. Yeah. And that dribbles the accountants every single time. Like they just do the same thing twice. Yeah, but that's not the same thing. Okay, let's see if we can try and implement this code. So I've taken the liberty of creating a template in the meantime. Well, not really. I just created a form, put my option statements there. So now, when I go back, I can tick. I can say, I'm going to assume I did my design. So I've gotten some marks out of 5. Look and feel, I will fix my look and feel. I do have my option statements, 1 mark. Variables and record structures, so that's what I'm going to do next. But for variables and record structures, I need my question paper to see what I'm doing. So half z there, another half z there. Cool. So the first thing I'm looking for is, the first I'm going to make is my record structure, right? Private structure, client data type. Let me make it a little bit smaller so everything fits. What do I have in my client data structure? I have name. I have income. I have amount spent. I have total. As total money spent by client. As double, I have total amount left. So we have spent, we have remainder. After remainder, we've got average spent. Yeah. No, no. No, it's not. Because it makes it difficult for the person reading to see what's happening. And also, if you have IntelliSense off, then it can't autofill those for you. You have to tap them out yourself. Chances of you making errors, the longer your variable name is, the more chance of error. And you're going to get to a point where you have errors in your code, and it's not necessarily your code, but it's your variable names where something is misspelled or something along those. So try keep them as um, short as possible. So I'm going to make that one shorter as well. But also don't make them too short where the first one is N, the second one is I, the third one is SPW, the third one is S. It makes no sense, right? So it needs to make some sort of sense, but don't write out the full sentence as well. Good. Here's another thing. Please do not make capital letters of your variables. It seems like you're shouting at me when I'm marking your practical, and it's just name, income. Okay, please don't do that. Average spent, the next one is flag. What did we say flag was? Flag is 7. 7, display the client should be flagged. Okay, I said I'll make it let's make it a Boolean, it's fine. Boolean is true or false. Basically, that's what it is. It's a binary variable. And the last one in 8, what is 8? Rating. And rating is going to depend on that A, B, C, D, E thing. So it should be a string. Cool. And that's what my record structure looks like. So your 5 marks, if I had to guess, I'd say your 5 marks comes from actually making the structure would be 1 mark. Having a spend per week as an array would be another mark. and 3 marks would come from the rest of the variables in there. Since you noticed the word each, you made spend per week an array. Yes, but not only the word each. If I open up the question paper again, you'll see that it's not only the word each, but the example has multiple values in it. So that is how you know it's an array in the structure. Yes, but you can also look at the example to see if it's more than one variable, then you'll know it is an array. Okay, questions? Yeah.
So essentially, you have it like learns what characters so much you don't need to read the characters.
If we had what?
Since we haven't learned what characters like too well, we don't have to make the rating of characters.
No, string is fine. String is fine. So, but we're not done with this, actually. We need a couple more. In order to realize my structure, I need to have private clients as client data type, right? And from there, I also need private NC stands for number of clients. To redeem the client array, I need NW, number of weeks, to resize the innermost one. Then when it comes to my commenting, I could say the easiest way to do this is how I prefer to do it would be, if I scroll down, these don't have numbers, but in our paper, we do have numbers. So variables and record structures would be like 0.4 or 0 point something. But let's go with the question. This would be record, and then here, just to show what I'm going to resize those to and save it. Let's go to my form. I know I need a grid. UJ grid, put it there. Properties, change the name to GRD bank, save it. I swear to God, if you leave your grid like this, I'm giving you 0 for look and feel. Okay. And I know I'm going to need a subroutine to display my stuff in my grid, right? That's another free mark for why? Oh, I'm missing a sub here. Thank you. Okay, so this will be GRD bank dot row. And Yeah, and we need a button. This is legit what some of you submit as your practicals. This will be properties. Where art thou, properties? Properties, text, input. This is question A. Button name, BTN input. Double click on that button. Should be at the bottom there. Close that up, put the button here. Okay, first thing we want to know is number of clients, right? So we'll do NC is equal to CInt input box how many clients. And then we will do NW is equal to CInt how many weeks. And from there, I'm going to resize clients to number of clients. And I'm going to resize clients. The innermost is spent a week to number of weeks. Cool. Then what am I going to do? I need to so this question didn't tell you what to make your rows and what to make your columns, right? So we're basically going to take it upon ourselves to what we want to make the rows and columns. In Informatics 1A, we most probably going to tell you what you need to make rows and what you need to make columns. So in this case, if I remember the question correctly, we need to have, for each client, we have multiple things for a client. In my head, I'm seeing client as rows and then everything else is columns. So for R as integer equal 1 to number of clients. Next, no, not for R, for C. C goes with weird, but it's fine. Place in grid. What row? Row C. What column? Column 0. What text? Client number. And then ampersand convert to string C. Then we're going to go for W as integer equal 1 to number of weeks. Next week, we will have place in grid column row 0, column W, row 0, column W, and this should say week number and convert to string W. Okay, not only that, we still have total. We have total, money spent, money remaining, flag, and something else. We have 5 more things. So actually what we need to do is resize grid, and we'll have grd bank dot rows is equal to number of client plus 1, and GRD bank dot calls is equal to number of weeks plus 1, plus we said total amount spent, amount remaining, flag, and what else? Rating. So that's that 5. That's why we have 5. It's a lot. Oh, no, what you doing? Okay, it's a lot. It's 5, and then I need to five. So the first one is number of weeks plus 1, and it's going to be total amount spent. Number of weeks plus 2, remain. Number of weeks plus 3. What's 3? Number of weeks plus 3, average. Average spent, number of weeks plus 4 should be flag, and number of weeks plus 5 rating. Okay, questions? Yes.
So when you read up the second one, shouldn't it be in the fourth?
No, I prefer it this way. Any other questions? Yes. It's fine. It's not complaining. Any other questions? That's incorrect. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's leave it as is and see what happens. So let's run the program. I've saved it. I think I've saved it. I don't think any of your issues that you raised are valid because it's working. Input, how many clients? 2 clients. Oh, sorry, man. I wasn't showing you guys the... It's broken now, but it was working. Trust me. Let me... Where's my cursor? Anyone see my cursor? Ooh. This is weird. Let me just close the window. Oh. Okay, some dodgy stuff is happening here. I don't think oh, there we go. There's my cursor. I figured it out. Let me run it again and show you it's running. Here it is. right? And I click on input and it says how many clients, and I say I have 3 clients, and it dies. And it says conversion from string, how many weeks, to integer is not valid. And some of you saw all of the mistakes I made up till this point. But some of you didn't. And that's the thing. How many of you have never seen this error before? Like this is the first time you see Visual Studio say it cannot convert that to a integer. So you've all experienced this error before. You guys are terrible coders. That's just my 2 cents. But that's what needs to happen. You don't want to be in a situation where the first time you see an error is in a test or exam situation, right? The reason behind that is if you see something new, do you know how to recover from it? No, you don't. But if you're doing it with your practicals and all of that, you still have enough time to go to the assistants. And the more sleepless nights and the more stress an error gives you, the easier it is to deal with it when you run into it again, right? Because you go, I remember how long this took me to fix, but I also remember how to fix it, right? Then that way the stress, when this happens, I've seen students sweat buckets when they try to run their program and something like this pops up and they go, sir, this computer's broken. Now, what do you mean the computer's broken? They go, I've never seen this error before in my life. I was like, okay, I'm sorry for you. And that's basically the best I can do in that situation. So try and find as many errors as possible. So yesterday when we did this, no, on Tuesday when we did this, I had some students online, they were like, I'm having this error right now and I don't know how to fix it, right? So the reason why I'm breaking my code on purpose is to show you the typical type of errors that you are most likely to run into when writing your test or exam for you guys to know how to recover from them. Obviously, my level of stupidity is not the same as yours. There might be some errors I even don't think are possible errors that you guys come up with. So if there are weird things that you have done before, tell me, I'll do it, and let's see what error I run into and how to fix it. Okay, so this is obviously one of the easiest errors we have here. We cannot convert a text into an integer. What's missing there is an input box. So as I was trying to quickly type out as much code as I can, because in my head 3 hours is not enough, I neglected to put in an input box. And this will happen. Chances are it will happen. So when it crashes, don't freak out. Just read what the error says and try and recover from it. So we've all come to a point where we see that this should have an input box. Okay, let's try that again. How many clients? 3 clients. How many weeks? 4 weeks. And it says number of rows cannot be less than 1. Who's seen this one before? I go, okay, it says number of rows cannot be less than 1. Number of rows, I get it. It's making sounds in my ears. It's not fun. And this is the reason why I do not like your grids being this small. I can see what the hell is going on. Therefore, I'm going to reduce marks. So let's fix that error. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Thinking I need this to be a little longer than that. And I'm going to have a bunch of buttons there. So let me make it a... And literally doing this doesn't take 10 minutes. Did you see how quickly it was to just resize everything? Please resize them to the appropriate sizes. Save everything. Try run it again. Input 2 and 3. Well, it's complaining, but it's doing the right thing. So I'm kind of happy. So what issue are we having here? What does it keep on saying? Because this is my button. There's nothing wrong that I'm doing in here. My columns are fine. My rows are fine. What's the issue? What is the problem? The online people have already figured it out. There's one student online that is not having a great time because they know everything that's wrong here, and I'm kind of like just wasting your time. I apologize. What is the issue? Okay, so if we go back up, you'll notice, but the reason why I did this is, do you see where the error is, the code is crashing in my input button? So ideally, logic dictates that I look in my input button to find the issue, right? So as I'm looking into my input button, I am doing that. This is crap, but it's there. I'm resizing my rows. I'm labeling everything. Is there anything wrong with, just make it smaller so it fits. Is there anything wrong with my input button input code? Can anyone figure out any line of code that's, okay, except line 36? And line 36 can't be the reason that my code is crashing, right? This is one of the other issues we have, where just because code is crashing, and this, I am partly because I said, when you put in things in different buttons, when you click that button and it crashes, at least you know that it's that button that is crashing and nothing else. In this instance, is there anything wrong with our button code? No, there isn't. Yes. I didn't write code for? Do we have anything that we need to put in rows? It's just clients. Are we calculating anything else for the, are we getting the average for something? I think we are getting the average in D. Let's have a look. And again, the reason I'm doing this is the first time I'm reading this question as well. Like since last year where I had to fix some of the issues. D says for each week, determine and display the average amount of money spent. This is the total amount of money spent by each client in the same week divided by that client. I don't think that's the one. In 6, let's see. If you scroll up, 6. And then we have after 6, we say for each week. Okay, for each week. Then you are right. Then we need number of columns plus 1, 0, and that should say week average, and this will be plus 1 plus 1. So that 1 is for the label, that other one is for the average. Okay, so the issue in this instance is if we step outside of our button and go into our subroutine, you'll notice that line 23 says rows. What's the difference between rows and row? Yeah. So rows is for assignment. If I want a certain number of rows, I use rows as a plural. If I want a certain row, I say row. So what's happening here is it will resize the number of rows to R, right? When we are running this code, when we are running this for loop specifically, and it says row 0, what does that do? Rows is equal to 0. What does rows is equal to 0 do? it sets the rows to 0, which is why Visual Studio complains and says rows cannot be less than 0 or less than 1. So the way to fix this is we go to our function or our subroutine, remove the S, and just keep it as row. Okay, as I said, I'm just trying to come up with some of the typical errors we've been seeing in past papers and try and correct those. Please don't come up with any more. Input, how many clients? 2 clients. How many weeks? 3 weeks. So at this point, average week, we'll say the average for that, average for that, average for that, and then everything else will be open. Are we happy? Let's rather do the opposite so everything fits. Try that again. Say how many clients? 3 clients, 2 weeks. Kind of fits. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Everything fits. Any questions with what we've done so far? Can you quickly explain the full stop between arrays and clients? Full stop between spend per week. What does the full stop stand for? Full stop where? Give me a line of code. Oh, wait, you can't see this. There you go. Give me a line of code and then I'll explain it to you. I don't, full stops. You're talking about this. This is wrong, by the way, but yeah. Why is this wrong? What is line 36 doing? Okay, the comma stands for going into type of action, right? So I think I've made this example before. Remember in the beginning when we were still working with text boxes, you would have to say textbox.txt, right? The dot would open up all of the members of the text box for you to choose which one you want, right? As much as if we were living in the literal world and you went to the barbershop or nail salon or wherever, and let's say the barbershop, for example, and you said, cut me, what do you think was going to happen? Right? You need to be specific to say, please cut my hair, right? That would be as much as saying, cut me dot hair, to tell you that from the entity, which is me, the part that I want is just the hair to be cut. Or if it's a nail salon, do my nails. So it would be me dot nails. You are specifying to what part of the entire object are you referring to, right? If we scroll up, you will notice that a client has a name, has an input, an income, has spent per week, has spent, all of those things. So if you just refer to a client, do we know which variable you're talking to? No, we don't. So you need to say, when you're giving information in, you need to say, I want to populate client.name. The name of the client is what I want to put information in. The income of the client is what I want to put information in. So at this point, what am I saying? I am saying I want to resize clients. That's fine. I want to resize, I want to create the entire entity of clients, maybe let's say NCs 10 times. So I want to create the entire entity 10 times, right? In line 36, I'm saying inside client, for each client, or inside client, I want spent per week. So that client dot spent per week should be resized to this number. That's what the dot stands for. The dot expands the object so that you can pick parts of that object apart. Does that make sense? I need to find out from the person that, okay, cool, thanks. So we should loop line 36 to resize the array for each. Why? Why is line 36 wrong? Yeah.
So say we have maybe like 20 clients.
Yes.
It's only resizing for clients 20.
Okay, so at this point we are saying client NC. So as the gentleman said, if NC is 20, in line 35, I'm going to resize clients to 20, right? meaning I have 20 clients. But if I say clients NC, if clients NC dot spent total, I mean spent week, which client am I talking to? The last client alone. It means all of the other clients, client 1 to 19, will not be resized. Their innermost array will not be resized. So what do we need to do? We want to resize it for each and every client. Okay. When you hear each client, what should your mind automatically revert to? For loop, each client. So if we are going to go through each one, we need a for loop. So this will be for C as integer equal 1 to number of clients, because we want each and every client. Put that code in there, and we can have C. So in this case, it's going to say for C, C starts at 1. So it's going to say client 1, resize their spent. Client 2, resize their spent. Client 3, all of the clients will be resized. Does that make sense? Okay, I think I've come up with all the idiocy I can think of that happens in question A. Anyone else think of any errors they've run into at this point in time during the execution of their program that I could try and replicate so that we can go through and see what that error is and how to solve that error? None. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, you notice that question A asked you to do all of this plus input, right? That's kind of too much work for one button to do, in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is, in my subroutines, private sub setup, and basically take all of this and put it in there, and over here just call setup. Cool. So the button is still doing that, but the code is in a subroutine. So what I need to do now is do input. So for input, we need to go through each. So for input, we need to go through each client. So we'll have a for loop. So what do we want to know? Here's another example of what that dot stands for. What do we want to know? For each client, we know that the first 3 is input, right? We need to know the name of that client. So I'll say, can I just say name is equal to? Why not? Well, name is there. It's up there. It's within my record structure. So in order to access name, I need to go through the record structure. What is my record structure? Clients. So I'd have to say clients at C dot name. So from the client record structure, what I'm looking for is name should equal to input box what is the name of client C. Not only do we want the name, we want the income as well. So clients at C dot, come on, income is equal to, that's because my client is spelled very badly. Income is equal to, convert to double, because it is a double. Input box I want to know how much that client earns. Third one is spent per week. Can I just start talking? Can I just start putting in spent per week? No, I cannot. Why not? Because it's an array. And since it's an array, we need to fill in the whole array. So we need to fill in information for each and every week. The moment you hear for each and every week, for loop, right? So there we need a for loop. Yeah. W. But still, although it is an array, it's still part of my record structure. So to populate it, I need to say client at C dot per week at W is equal to obviously, I could make the tick boxes a little more fancier to say more things, but that's not what we're interested in. And that's it. Save it. So at this point, I am getting the name, the income, and spent per week. If we go to our question says we need to get name, income, spent per week. And we need to obviously display this in the grid. So in the 2D part of the grid. So we can say place in grid. And what is the row? Row is clients, so it's C. What is the column? Column is weeks, so it's W. And what is the text? Text is converted to string, spent per week. I think we'll just have to end it there. Let me save it, run it, and see if there are any errors. We already have clients array to take care of. There aren't there many clients. No, we do have clients array in line 18. So here it is. Input, how many clients? Let's say I've got 3 clients over 2 weeks. Right, there it is. All the information is there. And then from there, it asks, what is the name of client 1? So we're going to call them C1. How much does client 1 earn? They earn 50,000. How much money used in week 1? 500, 300. Client 2, C2. How much do they earn? 700. How much used in 200? 100. Okay. Name of client 3, C3. 600,000. I don't care at this point. Okay. Did we do what the question asked us to do? No. The question said, and this is that point in time where you guys become so chuffed with what you've done. It works. It's wonderful. It's amazing. I am so happy. You did not answer the question. You answered half the question. If we go back, the reason why I highlight stuff, it says read in the number of clients, we did that. Number of weeks, we did that. Resize, we did that. For each client, display the name of the client. Have we done that? No. Display the total income. Have we done that? No. Display the amount of money spent each week. That's the only thing we've done. It's 2 parts of this question we have not done. Okay, and that's where and how you start losing marks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave it here. We'll pick it up next week from here. I would suggest that you try and do this question yourself. That way, going forward, you can have questions on how you've done it, and then we can try and solve those issues that you run into when trying to do this. Okay, thank you very much. I will see you guys tomorrow.